Christmas break, so it was
Yeah.
it was like our first serious scrim against a pretty
Hmm.
good team. So comms were a little bit disorganized, and
But I still think it's better than last night.
really, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't here last night, so I didn't see.
Okay.
Should have sent you the codes. I can type them out if you need.
No, it's I mean I have them, but
Okay.
yeah, like what is how basically what's the expectations for the coaching session today? Like, what needs to happen today that you say that you can go out of the session today and say like, yeah, this was helpful.
Um, hmm. I think. Well, what have we been working on in recent scrims? We've been working on ball comp. We've been working on. Should we work on our brawl? I think our brawl needs a fair bit of work.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of messy.
Yeah,
mhm. What maps do we play brawl on? We played it on KR.
I'd also kind of like to look at Blizzard World.
You'd like to look at Blizzard World?
Yeah, a
that
little
could be a
bit.
good one actually.
I think getting a more firm understanding of what we need to do on Brawl, um, as well as do we play? I think Brawl and Ball Comp gain a more firm understanding of what we need to do in each fight or what we should be looking for. I think that's probably how we can get the best out of the coaching session.
Okay.
Okay. On which map would be a good example?
We want to start with KR or Blizzard World.
I'm down with either.
Yeah, I mean, for probably for broad, we should do
Let's say
KR.
KR first. Kings Row.
I kind of remember we kind of just we did learn a lot when we played Kings Row against that team because of the way they were doing counter walls, but
Yeah,
so
I think talking about Maywalls as well as off angles, I feel like what a lot of good teams that do that we don't is like little micro flanks with like Korean Diva.
I feel like those get really like obliterated when a team is more coordinated though. I feel like it's kind of like a cheap gimmick, but like if a McCree goes for a flank and the whole team just turns on him, he just kind of dies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can talk.
So
Okay.
uh, that's why
See
I
what it.
think it's better to just play with the team, but I mean you can do that. It's very good to just flash and kill someone.
All right, then let's take a look at King's Row and with the goal of what was it like having an idea what we should look for in a fight. That's what you want to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then yeah, let's just like start with this, right? Like obviously normal brawl versus brawl mirror. What are we looking for? Let's say general speaking in a fight, brawl versus brawl. Like what are the opportunities? What are the things that we're looking for?
Walling off a target.
I will just write down.
Wall. Yeah. Ultimates. You can push with ultimates like window, high noon, bomb,
Speed.
etc. Speed.
Okay. And is there any way like you can describe this more in a sentence? Like what are we looking for with a push, with speed, with wall? Like what is generally speaking like who wins the fight? Like how do we try to win the fight?
It's basically like separating someone from the enemy, or it's like committing on one person.
Mm-hmm. Um and why is this so effective if we or why is this more effective if we put all our resources into one player or like separating one of them out instead of yeah attacking all of them,
Probably
for example.
because just the characters like BAP kind of struggle against a wall a little bit. With like lamp timings, it's just easy to cut off heals and then commit on one person.
Okay, right, like yeah, I definitely agree, obviously. Anybody else has a idea?
I mean, we do have a decent burst damage.
Yeah, we have pretty good burst damage, especially with like proper target focus. We can melt someone, even tanks, really fast
Yeah,
if they
but
don't have support from their team.
but is it really like do we play for burst damage in this Brawl versus Brawl matchup? Like, is it just basically a team who can burst somebody down first who wins, or who wins the fight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of getting resources out. This
Yeah.
entire thing is just breaking Ryan's shield, getting out Lamp, getting out Diva Matrix, and also speed.
Yeah, it's cooldowns.
Sustain.
Yeah, it's all about resource cooldowns basically, right? Like a brawl, right? Every brawl strategy, obviously, like, it doesn't matter if it's Ryan or something else. Like, every brawl strategy has the same obviously fundamentals. Like, brawl strategy, the most important thing is that we survive. That's also why it's so different to, like, what you mentioned, dive, right? Like, sure, we have abilities, how we like, or there's a way that we can burst somebody down, but this is not the strategy we're playing for. Like, dive plays for burst damage. Dive plays to burst somebody down. But so burst. But brawl plays about surviving. All what we do, every aspect of the fight, we are doing to survive longer in a certain space than the enemy team. So this includes, obviously, that we are grouped. Why are we grouped? Because obviously if we're grouped, then defensive abilities get much stronger. Think about a Reinhardt who holds a shield and a Mei who stands here. Like, somebody could basically attack the Mei, even though we already have a Reinhardt shield present. So that means the Mei has to use Ice Block or like another wall. This is like unnecessary if we're just grouped. The mate has to do nothing because we already have the Reinhardt shield. And obviously the same thing with like AoE healing, AoE effects, and so on. This is like why we are grouped. Another thing is, like, obviously our defensive cooldowns are really strong. That's why Brawl is so good at surviving. Reinhardt shields, defense matrix, Mei walls, all of these things are really good again in one direction, right? Obviously the lamp and so on. When we talk about surviving, we obviously want to not stack our cooldowns also, right? Like, imagine, like, if we get attacked and we use like lamp, we use Mei wall, and we use defense matrix at the same time. This obviously sucks, because if we stack all of our cooldowns, like one cooldown and another cooldown and another cooldown, all on top of each other, then the time that we can survive is so much shorter compared to a team that says they use this one cooldown first, then another cooldown, then another cooldown, and then another cooldown. Everybody agrees so far?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's the whole purpose. Now, obviously, when we talk about, like, this is super general, right? Now, obviously, when we talk about mirror matchups, it gets, like, both teams have the same strategy. Both teams now trying to survive as long as possible. So it is more on the micro side, because you have the same weaknesses and the same strengths, right? Like, what is the strength, obviously, of the Brawl composition? Good survivability, great defensive cooldowns against one direction, blah blah blah. What is one of the weaknesses of Brawl? One of the big weaknesses of Brawl is map control. Like, you're only really scary in the area where you are, right? Like, the only position where it's really scary is kind of here, right? This is where the blue team is scary. They're not scary here. They're not scary here. They're not scary here. Nowhere else, right? Like, it's like here also not. So that's the big weakness of a Brawl composition. So if you're playing now Brawl versus Brawl, obviously both strengths get thinned out, and both weaknesses also like kind of come true. So if both teams basically cannot control the map, then we have a lot of space, right? Because, like, here's a team that they crush against each other, but this is kind of free space. Let's get back to this free space in a second, because I think it's important to go over this in a different way. So I said here cooldowns, right? And this is also what I kind of to go on with this whole introduction. Like, it's all about kind of the cooldown management, because obviously we're all trying to survive longer as possible. So obviously the better we use our cooldowns, the more not stacked they are, the longer we can survive. And then either the enemy team has to go away, or obviously they just die on this position because they cannot survive anymore. They have no HP, no more shields, no more whatever. So we obviously need to force out cooldowns. We try to use our cooldown as much as possible, best as possible, and we also try to force out the enemy cooldown as efficient as possible. And there we come in now with the what you always said, like with the wall, with the defense metrics while he swings, with the lamp usage and so on, with the speed amp, and we have an advantage and all of these things, right? So we can start with an aggressive wall, we can start with a more defensive wall, a lot of different kind of factors, but it comes all down to using the least amount of cooldowns to survive and forcing out as many cooldowns as possible from the enemy team. Now, how can we force out, if we think now back to the space, right, like that we have here, how can we force out cooldowns in the most effective way? Against, like in Super in general, it's always, especially against Brawl, I guess, but also against every other team. If obviously we force them to use one cooldown here in this direction, normally the Reinhardt shield, or the defense medics, then basically it doesn't really matter so much like how much damage we do here. It's they have a defensive cooldown from there. But if we now also have somebody shooting from a different side, then they have to use 2 cooldowns at the same time. And this one here, mostly a McCree or a Reaper or whatever, doesn't have to, like, it's not his goal to flashbang right-click somebody and get a kill, which obviously is amazing, but this is not necessarily the goal. The goal is to make sure that they use a different cooldown at the same time. Remember, like, our whole goal is to not like to use the cooldowns like this. If we have a McCree flanking, we need to use 2 cooldowns at once. So that means basically this cooldown needs to go use then here, and then we have like kind of 1 cooldown less, and then like here we are dead, right? So that's why flanks are efficient. And why is this? Why can a McCree do this or a Reaper can do this in a Brawl against Brawl matchup? Because both teams have no map control. Like, they're not actively controlling. If you would do the same thing as the McCree against the dive team or against the spam strategy or against the dive strategy would just jump on you. And this spam strategy, they have a Sigma shield here. They have a I don't know, like a Widow standing here shooting you. Like, it doesn't work. So, but in a Brawl versus Brawl, you always want to have somebody who goes into flanks and who tries to kind of, forces our cooldown out. Does it make sense?
I feel like off angles are more prevalent for like McCree though, because if you go too close, you can still get sped on pretty easily.
Sorry, you're saying that McCree is not really used for those off angles, or what are you saying?
No, I'm saying he's better at off angling and worse at like all in, walking in and flashing. Because if the team notices you, you kind of just die.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, how aggressive you go depends on how what's the opportunity, right? Like, if you go around here, through a hell, for example, you see a diva. I mean, obviously, you don't flash, or like, you don't go all in anymore, right? You just shoot her, force some defense metrics out, and then maybe go back, or you just stay if you can, and force more defense metrics out, right? But if you go here and then you see an Anna here, of course, you can just still flashbang right click. So depending on opportunities you get.
Do you think it's worth to spend time not with your team to go for like an aggressive play like that though? I feel like it's kind of risky against a McCree who just is like more consistent and just plays with their team.
Yeah, okay, that's the thing, right? Like, it's all about this cooldowns, right? And how many cooldowns we get out. And there are 2 ways of forcing them out. Option number 1, what I kind of just said, is one option to be just say, hey, different angle forces 2 cooldowns at the same time. Obviously, this means that for this to happen, as you already mentioned, it's sometimes a little bit risky. Or like, we understand that it is our goal right now for this fight to win the cooldown wars in this way. When it's normally common, for example, if you have a window or something like this, right? And we can window here and we push somebody, like somebody push from the side or somebody. So, okay. But anyways, I don't want to talk about ultimates. This is option number 1, and obviously it means that our attention is on this McCree. Like, what I mean with this is a diva should stay in between each other. He should be ready to defense with the McCree. A Lucio should maybe also be aware of the McCree and should be able to help him. Like, we put resources basically into making this play happen so that we kind of get these 2 angles, which immediately means our Reinhardt plays more slowly, more defensively, because obviously he doesn't get the resources as like, doesn't get the same amount of resources. This is option number 1. And then we have an option number 2, we say, hey, for whatever reason, because of the situation, we say, no, we don't want to take a off angle right now. Let's just take a different color. We say option number 2 and say, okay, we want to give the resources to our Reinhardt. That means defense metrics, that means speed boost, all of those things. And it also means, obviously, that we are right away, we are just basically faster, kind of, because we obviously just, what you see or what you feel in these moments is they just run at us, right? They just like run us over. Because they want to put all of their best cats basically in this aggression and like try to kind of really get a favorable cooldown, try to fear. Normally with aggressive walls there, you use like aggressive cooldowns mostly. Use the flashbang to maybe over the Reinhardt to, and then like burst them down, things like this. Right? You use also we use cooldowns first most of the time. And obviously in this case, you can still do this as a McCree if you find an opening, but normally this push is so fast that it's better that you spend kind of, let's say, you deal 50 damage here, but here deal maybe like 200 damage, but in 3 seconds, right? And normally when our team says, and it's obviously a risk because you don't really get support or there's not really much going for you, so like somebody helping you. So normally in this kind of situations, again, you can still go for it, but I would just say, hey, take the 50 damage right now in the moment we are going in, instead of kind of doing this more risky play. So mostly what it comes down to is that McCree then also stays more with the team and tries to do his best. Obviously he's less effective because there's shields, defense metrics, walls in his face, but this is option number 2. Like, do you guys like understand the differences? And this a little bit answered also another question, but do you understand what I mean with this? Like, these are just kind of 2 ways of playing it.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like the flank strategy actually might be pretty good for like confirming wins, simply because like the amount of times you can't really play like with your team in a group really that much against a Mei to consistently like confirm a win. It's more like of a stalemate a lot of times where you're just kind of poking out and getting cooldowns out. But I feel like if you were to have a Lucio and a D.Va on a Kree, like speed in behind them and maybe just get a free kill while playing passive, that like I feel like that is more of a clear win con than just kind of like hoping that you win the 6v6 by shooting each other for like.
Yeah, like yes and no. We can talk about it in a second, like when we do what. One thing I really, because I feel like I hear that now twice or 3 times, what I just want to get a little bit out of your heads is this idea of I flank, I need to get kill. Like, this is not the case, right? Like, it's not like
Just force out cooldowns.
exactly like this is like if I get a D.Va defense matrix, I'm okay with it, right? If I get it maybe in, I don't know, like a please slap out of it, I'm jumping. Like it's like a huge cooldown. It's great, right? And we can talk about it in a second, like when we want to maybe do what, but or when teams are going more for this like 6-man approach or like the flank approach. But yeah, I just want to show another example of like a team actually playing it where you can see that this kind of flanks going on. Like here, obviously, we have a Brawl against Brawl. You can see it, right? Like the Busan match. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. Right, like fusions against Excelsior. And what I want you to focus on is on Carpe, obviously, and on, say, Biobi. Mostly positioning, right? Like, have the teams grinding out. And we right at the start, we kind of see like how Carpe is kind of trying like a little bit, right? He's looking for those openings. He will not always get kills, obviously, but again, like cooldowns, like even like any advantages, even like HP, whatever is the play. And we also see like like the D.Va. Look at how D.Va's positioned, and obviously like we are playing on the Overwatch League level. Or this is like Overwatch League level. This is not random. The D.Va is there and not on the left side. On the other side, we see New York, right? Is more like together. They're like trying to push in there, like they're putting a lot of damage on Tosado right now, right, to push him down. And we all can also see like the difference of where the damage goes, right? Like we see the McCree most likely shooting at heroes like Jonak has got a little bit low HP. I think the Mei also gets a little bit damaged right now. Yeah, look at this. The Mei gets low HP, right? On the other side, it's Sado who gets kind of all of the damage. And we also see immediately like how D.Va is peeling. Like this is just kind of 2 really different ways of how they approach it. Not saying anyone is worse. It's just like different approaches for the first clash basically, right? And then things happening. then now we see basically also New York, right? So you will be going a little bit more adventurous, going a little bit more on the right side, forcing something out. And yeah, obviously at the end somebody dies. Okay, like then the plays just out. But you saw that there was a clear difference between, or like you saw that this kind of flanky and this more like aggression maneuvers from both teams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like one more example because I just have it. So why not? Can quickly go over it. So also on King's Row, obviously this is like 2020 this game, so don't look at the comms or something like this, or the heroes they play, different balance patches. But same thing, like right, like Titans with the Reaper. It's the same thing, the same way the McCree, right? Like, but also like coming from flanks, right? He comes from from other side right now, the Reaper, so that the defense metrics, or at least so basically, if he comes from there, he has more damage potential and he forces more cooldowns. If it's even like the nade, for example, right? Like, or defensive cooldowns. But we see he's not basically running with the Mei, with Haskell or with the Ryan. And then they do some things, get a kill. Yeah, I think they trade here. And here's, I think, was really interesting, like how they just like how they keep doing this. Like, look at the Reaper, and look at the at McCree. Like, right, the Reaper noticed that they're pushing in here, or like there's aggression on the main, on the point, and he keeps going like on this flank route. He's not. I don't think he have even attacked the Reinhardt once really, like actively, right? Like he's still trying to find this other spot. And also like here, like they'd lose this fight. Then also the next engagement. If we look where the Reaper is teleporting, right? Like the team comes from basically from above, and the Reaper teleports to come from a different angle. The same way as McCree. Like look where the McCree is standing, right? Like where he also looks for a different approach. Obviously being careful, right? Like being ready to roll back and play defensively because he understands the risk that is involved there. So he's not standing there forever, but both TPS kind of try to kind of get basically a favorable cooldown trade out of this engagement. For example, a favorite cooldown trade could be on Titan's side, the defense metrics against the Reaper wave, because the Reaper shift ability is not really helpful to keep our Reinhardt alive. So if the Reaper can basically force the D.Va defense metrics him, and then he can just shift out pretty safely, because obviously this team will always be close and he can just hide behind the Reinhardt shield. This is amazing, right? And this also like is a good transition to like when you go flank and when you don't flank, because you want to flank when or like especially as a Reaper, but the same also a little bit as McCree. Like I would never go on a flank as a McCree if I don't have my role, or if I don't have a shift ability for my as a Reaper, because obviously, yeah, you are in danger here, right? And you need to understand this, or like you are, and the moment kind of you have no shift cooldown, you just basically go back and you play more defensively behind the Reinhardt chip, behind basically all of the defensive things, and you keep doing your consistent damage, and so on. And if you have these abilities like a roll or like a flashbang or like other things, you can. I'm not saying you have to, but you can look for this. For this flanks. Okay. Let me just move this away. So coming back to our game, and also like maybe to the question like when do we do what? Basically, and a lot of things, or mostly depends on your place as a team, that you need to talk to each other and like understand like how do you like to play. Basically, do you like to play really, let's say quote unquote aggressive or like fast? Then normally this immediately means hey, Reinhardt, right? Like we put resources to Reinhardt if we want to like play really quickly, rush in, go a lot of like we like to go for aggressive Mei walls, for example. Like we go for Mei walling to split instead of like playing defensive to help Reinhardt. This is normally immediately as like shows that the team likes to have this more aggressive style, which obviously just naturally means resources go to my Ryan. So mostly it will come down to like this playing like 6, right? Bursting somebody down, hoping with this burst of Mei wall and damage on this enemy Reinhardt to force out a lamp, force out a cooldown trade, basically, right? We try to force the lamp, and we try to force like with the Mei wall the lamp, because our lamp is better, or like we value the lamp higher, generally speaking, because it prevents somebody from dying, and then we can kind of keep pushing if we have still a healthy amount of HP and so on and resources, and maybe like win the fight with our lamp. later on. This could be an idea to approach. But at this point on here, when I from this point on, it's really up to your creativity of what you want to do, right? Like every team plays different. As you also just saw in the Overwatch League example, like the who was it? Seoul played immediately on the flank, right? The Carpe was immediately on the Philadelphia. It was immediately kind of on the right side, and New York were just like pushing in, right? Like it's really up to your team, like what you want to do. The only thing you kind of need to know a little bit, or like what everybody needs to understand, is what is our general approach. Do we generally speaking want to like more playing W, more like S6, or more like basically Diva on Reinhardt, or do we play a little bit slower and maybe try to enable our McCree to do something on the flank and so on? Why the McCree? Obviously because the Mei always wants to stay with the Ryan, right? Because of the synergy of, I don't have to tell you. Yeah. Does it make sense so far? Okay. Maybe like, sorry, one thing about like when do we do what, right? Ultimates is this big indicator. Like obviously if we have things like Baptiste window, for example, right? Baptiste window is obviously okay, we can just window and we could just like keep pushing and force a fight there. Then obviously we can just say, hey, maybe we just want to like if we have them here, let's imagine we have a window. If we manage to kind of put a window here somewhere, right, and then force a fight in this area, we don't need the McCree to also flank at the same time because we already have an advantage, right? We already have the advantage of just basically one ultimate against 0. So we're most likely winning this 6 versus 6, like just both teams kind of just running against each other. Like think about like, I don't know, really just 2 casts or like somebody just pressing, you know, like arm wrestle against each other. Like the one who is stronger just wins. Like obviously there are details and so on, but it's not so much finesse. Like of course maybe at the micro level, but I hope you know what I mean. So if we already know that with the window here we are stronger, we don't try to be taking this more risky approach of like maybe like taking a flank or so on. The other and the same way around. Like if we know they have like 6 ultimates or so, we have 0, and we have to win the fight. Like it's not just we can just go in and take the L and force up some cooldowns. If we really need to approach it, then I would say maybe it's better to play defensively and look for like some more flanks because we expect him to go aggressive, and I'm ready with my Ray wall to go defensive here and so on. This could be a way. Like what I can tell you, I can like from what we always did as Sheer Cold when on King's Row, obviously we had also like every team has their own style a little bit, and we like to, especially in the first fight, always try to go for the 3-3 splits. So what we did is we put the Reinhardt and the Mei, of course, here on this side. Baptiste obviously a little bit behind. The McCree, Diva, and the Lucio basically was here on the statue. And mostly it's a Lucio against Lucio fight. This Lucio here from us fights against this Lucio. And then what happened is that we walked in here. At the same time we walked here. The McCree with the defended from the Diva tried to kind of get some kills out. And normally what always happens, or what we expected, is that the enemy team push obviously on our Ryan, right? Maybe even like walling him behind. And that's why our Mei was always playing like really close to him, so that she could immediately kind of counter wall here. Sorry, different color. Right, like they counter wall to immediately, like we counter wall to immediately. Why is this like it's a great map? Because obviously this wall is close. Like it's pretty easy for Mei to make a close wall here, where it's completely done. So even if the enemy team kind of walled behind us here, we could just basically counter this. And also with the Lucio, he is a little bit in the middle. So if they would do this swing, then our Lucio could just speed boost our McCree out, and obviously our Reinhardt could push in. So we tried to basically, this was the first approach, and then immediately afterwards we kind of just swapped it and said, okay, like right, obviously if you have a big advantage, we just W and we just push in, right? But if there's no significant cooldown trade or good one that we have, we say, okay, we immediately just go here and say Ryan Mei goes here, and McCree and Diva goes here, and the same thing from the other side. And try to kind of basically play a little bit ring around the rosy with them. But we always kind of played more around our McCree in these moments. Because especially back in our team, back in the days, we had a really aggressive McCree player with Asking, who was who just loved to be like, was really good when you enable him. But yeah, on the other side, if we would have had like obviously then a beat or something like this, or like a Mei ult, right? Then we would just maybe like play way more aggressive, because if we have a beat, again, like we can just like run them over. So we don't have to do any other things. We can just immediately kind of put all of baskets there and do it like this. Does it make sense? Like this, like, do you
Yeah,
understand the example?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, okay. I talked now a lot. Any like more like understanding questions when it comes to the brawl?
Would it be worth if they push like the Diva Kree on like the other side of statue, posing like the May Rhine? Would it be worth for the Rhine May to back up to the Kree Diva, or yeah, the Kree Diva, or is it basically almost always you push behind them?
What do you mean? Like, when you push here, did our Ryan get backs up, or what do you mean?
Yeah, like yeah, our Rhine backs up if they start to push the Kree Diva on a flank.
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, like so if they now, let's say, if they now push here on McCree, that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Sure, you can do this, but normally it's like what we figured out from also just testing and scrimming, which that's what I mean. Like, it mostly just comes down you testing things out, how you like to approach, and you find out like best for your team, not for general, for your team. And we normally like what normally happened, if they do this, was that our May could just like keep going here because they were, let's say, starting, like they were basically almost. I'm not saying like we at least in theory when we talked about it in the VOD reviews, we always said at the same time. But normally what happened in like the actual game was that the Reinhardt was the one who pushed a little bit faster. And then if they were just kind of turning their it never really happened. It happens really rarely that the enemy Reinhardt turns his back against our Reinhardt. And even if this happened, then the May could just go around here and just wall. Not the May wall, like not the tanks, but they could maybe wall, I don't know, the McCree or somebody else. Right? Somebody who is like too slow to make also this full rotation as 6. So that's
Okay.
normally what we went for then. But again, what we talked about here, like this example, is just I wanted to show you that kind of one strategy that we used. Obviously, feel free to do it yourself. But I guarantee you will not come to the same result because you're just a different team. So
Mm-hmm.
if you really want to like, or if really like, Brawl, you play this a lot and so on, you want to get practice it, especially obviously these are the super details, right? What is way more important to tell, or like the way more important thing is this whole idea of who do we give the resource to, like when do we flank, when do we not flank, or like like when you play a bit slower and faster and so on. This like this example here with like we do this and this split, this specific thing is obviously a detailed version just for this, mostly for this point. And sure, use it, try it out, and then see kind of in what views when you talk to each other what worked or like what just feels more comfortable for you and adjust to it. But the other thing of like playing fast or playing slow, normally how we called it, like basically slow means McCree, fast means the Reinhardt, is something that before every fight happens, doesn't matter on this point, doesn't like anywhere here, should be talked about, and everybody should have the same understanding. And then obviously you individually make a choice of what you want to do. You know the goal of our team, and now you use the cooldown defense like in a certain way. Especially it was important for the May war. Like slow means always, well, I mean for us always walling defensively. And using speed boost defensively and so on. And fast always meant the opposite.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask Luke and Spike, like, what kind of team do you think we would be?
Well, I kind of think that it's situational. I think that if you're down in ultimates, then it would probably like, and your only option is to kind of like force value, then it would be good to go on a flank. But at the same time, I feel like flanks are kind of inconsistent to practice because every single time you go on a flank, it's kind of like you're improvising. You can't really practice improvising that well against every single team. I feel like you have to. I don't know. I think that playing as 6 is like the more consistent option, but if you can get really good at flanking, and I think that there is kind of like a method to it if you do put resources towards the Kree. But I think it depends on how you really want to play it, especially because you are the main tank. So
Yeah, and I mean, Cinema was messaging me last night. She wanted me to like go with her a little bit more. 'Cause she was noticing that their Diva and Lucio were working really well together. Which is like a lot of the reason why they were able to like outposition us and stuff. So I think if we start doing that like 3-3 split, I think that could be pretty good. But like you
Yeah.
said, it's also
I would like
pretty
to
situational.
I'd like
Yeah,
to
let's
try it.
try it.
I don't think
Okay.
that you really choose one or the other. Like you can't flanking every single time is going to become really predictable against
Yeah, we'll
any good
choose
team.
it between each fight.
Yeah.
No, for
So
sure.
you kind of you just need to talk about it and
Mhm.
plan. It's like in any like team, I feel like before each fight, like in between each fight, you should probably just talk about what your plan is for the next fight, like what ults you plan to use, or
Yeah.
how you plan to create value if you're in a disadvantage.
Yeah.
If since you'll be Decree, if you ever see like an opportunity, like even if we didn't plan it, should we like if you
Well,
see the opportunity, should you call and we can play passive from there? I think our team can like
I
play to that call.
I think that um the way that we've been playing, where our diva has consistently been on our Rhine, I kind of just fell into the place of us always not doing flanks because the way our team comp was set up. But I think that the way our team comp was set up was kind of bad.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like Fusion should have been closer on our Rhine, and we shouldn't have played so aggressive against the way, like, because they did the same gimmick to us every single time with their Mei, and we just didn't adapt.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that this scrim for our Brawl was definitely one of our worst. But like I wasn't playing amazing on Kree either. I think that we need to like kind of take a step back, and I think the most important thing is just talking about what we want to do in between each fight, so that we understand, or like we have a game plan when we're going in, rather than just because like we didn't even talk about what ults we were gonna use on Brawl. We just kind of
Mm-hmm.
like let it roll, which was bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the more you like also the more experience you get playing it, the less you have to also talk. Like right at some point you just like, for example, in our like also in our team we also practice, for example, the flashbang shatter. A lot of times at the start it was absolutely horrible. Like we flashbanged and then 5 seconds later we shuttered, or like I don't know, and like it was really bad. Like on a point where we said, like it's not worth it anymore. We just shouldn't do it. And we obviously talked about it and outside the game, like hey, what should we do? Whatever. And like nothing special, right? Like just the result is okay. Like our Ryan reads, like if our McCree says like now, then the Ryan has to trust. Like it's a trust shutter. He doesn't even look at the shields up or not. He just press Q, and then we got like not maybe this was not like maybe this was one of the options, but basically we got better, right? We practiced, and we got so much better that like especially in all also like tournament games, obviously where it then counts. I heard a lot of times where our McCree was just like, or we were just saying like, hey, let's go for shatter next fight, and that was the call. Like this was the whole game plan, right? Like this Contenders tournament, tournament game. The whole game plan was just like let's go for shatter, and it sounds bad because obviously it's not so like it's not as much detail and there should be like a little more explanation, but we were already like this was a really good, I mean this was time obviously where Brawl was super meta for us, so we played it a lot and everybody understood exactly what happened, and there's like all the details we don't even talk about anymore, that we like flash shutter and so on, because it was already so clear for everybody. So I just want to say like, right, like if you get to this, like it always kind of the communication, it feels at least for me like it's always kind of this like there's a little bit of a curve, right? Like you need a lot of more communication at the start, and then the more you practice, the less communication you do, and maybe more specific things. That you just say, hey, we play slow and everybody knows or whatever. But yeah, at the start, I would definitely encourage you to just say basically everything or like as much as possible, and then over time it will just slow down at the details that you need to say. But we need to like appreciate, we need to like start this, right? We also need to embrace the kind of defeats that things like don't work, and then we just literally took over it. Like, why does it not work? Is it just like, and then we need to make a decision, right? Like, do we like to play more? I don't know, for 6 man and more for like aggression and so on, with the goal of obviously having a cooldown trade, which is mostly, not all the time, but mostly a Mei wall against the lamp. Right. The thing is, if you use Mei wall and we don't get a lamp out, and nothing's more specific or like in like nothing like more bigger things and so on, then maybe the 6 man is like the going aggressive is not, at least how we do it from the micro point is not as a problem. Like things like this, and you just look at this and you talk about it. But yeah, Okay, do we also want to take a look at some fights? Obviously, we talked. I mean, I guess we can just do the whole what do you on your own now because you know exactly what to look
I
at.
mean, honestly,
yeah.
I kind of understand. The next scrim that we do, I think that we definitely need to actually play to learn rather than just kind of playing.
That's today.
Yeah, we were not playing and trying new things. We were kind of just doing the same thing over and over and over. The only thing we really learned from this game was to not get walled, or to not wall their Mei, to not wall their Rhine with their Mei.
The problem is also like here is that it's so much harder for the attackers Mei to get a good Mei wall compared to the defenders one, because I mean how easy, like I said, this is like super easy to make a wall here, because they're all closed. Like there's no way of going like besides this, right? But think about like our Mei, like where can our Mei make a wall? It's always kind of open, right? Like it's a open space here. Like where do you want to really wall? Like obviously you can do it, it's not impossible, but I'm just saying they always have at least one way of kind of getting through it pretty easily compared to us, which is kind of just closed. So that's why at least, I mean, obviously I'm talking from my perspective, where I obviously argue always for this approach. Again, like it's obviously like, yeah, I my team, we play this and we play this for a reason. So obviously I cannot really yeah, it's hard for me to say like this is a good play. I understand that this teams do this and this is definitely fine, but I personally just prefer this split option for one of those reasons. But obviously, yeah, again, like I'm just one person, and this is so team depending and then so also detailed, where figure out what works for you and don't just like like copy things and so on. Obviously, but the best way of starting to learn is copying something, understanding like how it works, and then after we have the understanding, we go away from this copying when we make our own from it, right? And maybe there's even a different split you want to do. Maybe you do, I don't know, the Baptiste McCree split or whatever.
I think I had a bad thought process about going on flanks, because my thought process was going on flanks is kind of selfish, because you're not allowing the rest of your team to play in like a 6v6 fashion. It's more like you're kind of like you're putting all of the like you're literally deciding whether or not you win or lose by going for that play, rather than. I mean, I like going risky, like I really do, but my thought process was like, if I go on a flank and then I die, I lost the fight for the team because I wanted to try something that was risky.
I mean, so we win or lose is 6.
Yeah.
Like, I think if we have like a better chance at getting those resources out by going on the flanks, then we should do it. There are, again, as you said earlier, it's situational. If we should go main as 6 or take those flanks and play a little bit slower. I think, I'm just thinking about our team. It might be better to play a little bit slower and go for those flanks, especially since we don't have, well, right as we are now, Lich isn't the most comfortable in mate, right?
Yeah.
I think playing for more defensive walls can probably be a lot easier than going for those attacking walls. So playing slower, playing for those flanks might be better suited to our team, for now at least.
With how their Mei was playing, I think that we actually could have just walled off their Mei and then let them burn Mei wall, and then we just walked in for free.
Yeah,
I think
I needed to chill out.
More about baiting rather than just forcing.
Yeah, that's so true, right? Like especially on this level, then where we're also like obviously like talking about, you also like need to play your opponent a little bit. Like of course you have your own style and you go into a game. Like obviously it's like, right, if it's scrim, we want to mostly practice, and I think it's completely fine that we kind of do the same thing 4 times and maybe even 4 times lose if we have the understanding that we practice this specific thing, and right, like because it doesn't matter who wins or lose, but obviously in a tournament game, right, if this would be, or if we're trying to win, right, if we say, hey, the scrim is specifically to win, we do everything to win, then obviously we're trying, you have to play your opponent. If you notice like, hey, this Mei is already super out, then maybe you do more this aggressive walls to force out something, right? Because it just works against this team really well. So
yeah, I think adaptation is very important, and like maybe if we lose a fight, we talk about what we learned about like their
Yeah,
playstyle or
thinking,
what
their
like
crew likes to flank.
yeah.
They like to wall first.
Sometimes you hear in like Overwatch League comms, just people like trash talking their enemy because they do the same thing every single time. But just like making that aware to your team and being like, okay, this is what we need to do in response, is exactly how to beat like an enemy team. But just more about like practice. Like I feel like eventually, if you were to practice this style against enemy teams, eventually you would fight someone who did the same thing as another team, and then it would just like become muscle memory almost.
Yep.
I think it's very important that we get like everybody here, because I feel like us talking about this right now, I understand a lot.
Yo, can we make it like
more.
mandatory to watch the VOD? Y'all in the future, I hope you're paying attention. Put down your phone.
Yeah, because I feel like
Unless you're watching on your phone.
it would just be nice to be able to understand. But I mean, we could talk about it tonight.
Like yeah, definitely, right? Like, I mean, again, like on this level, it's having this, like, how the coordination is so important that we just have the same idea what we want to, like, how we want to approach this, and then obviously everybody makes their own individual choices. But yeah, and I know, like, I really have nothing more to say. The only thing I can say, like, if you want inspiration, right, from this, like, what can we do, and what especially do we do if we have like this ult economy and so on, what are the options, what are the teams playing, I would just advise you just watch, like, I don't know, like like obviously I'm voting for the European contenders because we're playing there, but I also think we're playing mostly Brawl, or like Europe is obviously a lot of like really Brawl centered, and especially I think the August one or something like this contender season is obviously on a YouTube account. You saw a lot of Brawl against Brawl matchups, and if you just, I don't know, double speed, want to go through it a little bit, just kind of look at the right approach. It's like, hey, how they're playing it with like the ultimates and so on, and do they go more like this W fast in, and how do they do it, like with like what do it start with ultimate and so on. I think this is a great way of getting some inspiration of kind of, right, like in which, like, yeah, when do we do what and when do we want the other thing. Okay, yeah, perfect. Then, I mean, we have 1 more minute, but I think we're already done with everything. So I think, yeah, if there are no more questions, then I hope this was helpful and you got something out of it. And I will obviously upload the session right away. Will take like 10 minutes or so, I guess. And then the others can watch it, and hopefully you can talk with them and have a good scrim tonight.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Thor.
No problem.
Oh, I have a question also.
Sure.
So we're gonna scrim in about 2 hours. So I just wanted to ask you, do you think you could give us maybe like a goal to work towards for the scrim?
Sure. Like, I think
I have.
Yeah?
I was gonna say I have a lot of things I'd like to talk about with the team later. Honestly.
Yeah, like I think it's amazing that you asked, and I think, or like that you said this with the goal, right? I think this, I mean, yeah, like I think this is like the core sort of scrimming. Like if you don't have a goal of scrim, then it's almost pointless. Like the goal can also be winning, but then we all have to have the goal to win, and we do everything for it. So yeah, I think having a goal is really good, and everybody should do it. I wouldn't be comfortable of giving you a goal because I just don't know really where you're at right now, like what your team is working on. But that's why, like already Luke said, right, I think make sure that when you talk to that you don't go in the scrim to that and have like 20 things on your mind. Like, I don't know if, like, again, I don't know if you feel like you can do all of it, but I would appreciate, like, I think it's best if you have like this one particular goal that you really like focus on, and that you maybe like also like over focus on, that you say like, hey, in every fight we talk about specifically like what we want to do on the individual level, whatever this goal can be, and maybe even doing it too much, just so we get a little bit of a hang of it, and then next time we focus maybe more on, okay, next scrim where we play, I don't know, play only for the flanks, right? We only play slow with our Ryan, and we really test this out, and then after the scrim 2 minutes we talk about, hey, what do we think about it, right? Instead of trying to kind of maybe do everything at once, because yeah, I think it's
I think
better.
The number one thing you made me realize tonight is that, especially on our Brawl comp, we're not really we're really not trying different things in our scrims. I don't really think we're learning all that much because we're not like talking in between trying to figure out like stuff or at least like a strategy. We're not trying to do that at all. I think that's what I realized is that we need to realize that we're just doing practice a lot more than like always playing to win, because I don't think that that's really that beneficial.
Yeah, like I think at first, like the first while of scrims we had was just building synergy, but now we're at the point, if I call someone and their location on ball, 80% of the time one of y'all will follow up. So I think we're past that point. We need to start looking for those things every single scrim.
And the planning and so on and the talking, like in a scrim, you practice, right? And you make the things like you make the solutions, but you know what the like you practice some specific thing, and you're not trying to figure out problems. You're trying to enforce the solution. In what views you talk about problems and you figure out the solutions. But in a scrim when you play, you do them. So I would also like basically what you said, like that's why everybody has to be here, so that we all together figure out the solution, that we don't have to do it in a scrim. Because if in the scrim we start talking about, okay, how we can solve this and this problem, it's just not the time for it. We should go into scrim and say, okay, look guys, this was the problem, and we are actively working on one possible solution. Maybe it's the wrong one, but we're working on, I don't know, one possible solution, and we try this out. Yeah. Okay, great. Then I don't want to let you hang longer. I will upload it immediately, and Unicorn, we just talk about it. We want to make it next week again, and with the timings on. We just stay in touch, okay?
I will. All right. Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
Thank you.
Then
Thank you.
see you guys. Bye bye.
See you.
Bye.